Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. And we are once again fortunate to be joined by a frequent guest of the Gaggle, Hans Mahncke, who needs no introduction. I mean, he's an expert on legal matters, expert on political matters, and whenever there are any kind of intricacies, whether factual or legal, that we need clarified, Hans is the person we turn to. And obviously there's a lot of legal matters that need clarifying. So, I mean, I'll just summarize how I see it, and you may or may not agree with it, Hans. So, but I mean, we at the moment we have these two tracks. We have the House Republicans, who are investigating the Bidens, Hunter Biden, and of course the relationship with his father. And then we have the other track, which is the 4 indictments that have now been issued against Donald Trump. But I think that these are interlinked, much as the Russiagate hoax, the Mueller investigation, the House and Senate investigation into Trump-Russia collusion was linked to what we were finding out at that time from Devin Nunes and others about the scandal of what had happened in 2016, the spying on the Trump campaign, the attempt to hobble him and destroy him. So they are intimately linked, as I see it. Anyway, Hans, the floor is yours. How do you see it?
Oh, absolutely. They are very much linked. And I always wondered, when did this all start, right? So I commonly get back to February of 2014, the coup in Ukraine, where a lot of these things took off. We might go back to 2008, which is, of course, when Ukraine was promised NATO membership, number one, big problem. And number two, Obama won in 2008. And Obama is the one who weaponized the DOJ. I mean, essentially, all FBI, all the people were progressively, the old guard were replaced with the sort of the new DC woke crowd. And, we see the fallout from that now. So anyway, I don't want to split hairs about where exactly it started. It's somewhere between 2008 and 2014. And we're seeing the results of that right now. And I completely agree with you that whether you look at Hunter Biden and sort of getting off, whereas Trump is being pursued, to no lengths, it's really the same thing. It's the corruption of the justice system, and it's also covering up what's going on in DC. And on that front, I think what is not talked about enough is the shock that Trump gave the establishment in 2016. I mean, 2016, the establishment had the double shock of Brexit and Trump. And Brexit, they've sort of dealt with in their own way. They sort of papered over all these things. And, Trump, that still lingers.
Oh, yeah.
They don't want that to happen. That cannot happen again. That was just so
bad.
The
specter of Trump. That's everything. That's the entire political conversation.
Yeah. Exactly. And part of the reason for that, having this outsider, I don't think he was particularly effective in what he did. Although just his mere presence exposed all these this corrupt underbelly of DC. But I think the mere idea that this outsider would come and sort of upset the apple cart is just something they just can't have happening again. And so we see that on all these different fronts. We see it with Hunter Biden in terms of, well, that's their arrangement. That's what they do. Then you have someone like Trump coming along, and that upsets that then, you might not be able to continue on that path, and that's not good. You don't want that. But you see it elsewhere as well. You saw it with COVID, how the entire establishment kind of circled the wagons for the establishment, and everything had to be like according to the establishment, whether it's the origin of COVID or whether it's the response or whatever. There was only one path, and that was the establishment path. And as soon as you were not on that path, you were bad. You were a right-wing extremist. You were all these things. So that's really the core of it all. If I were to sort of try to get to one point, and that is the fact
you're absolutely right, Big, because even during the Trump years, I mean, you had the Justice Department, his own Justice Department, that essentially instituted the Mueller probe. Because you had his Jeff Sessions just simply said, "Oh, well, I'm compromised. I can't possibly look into this. I stepped aside." And then his number two set up Mueller. And again, Comey worked for Trump. And then, of course, you had Bill Barr, again, worked to sabotage Trump. It's an extraordinary thing. I mean, that's the evidence that it's the political establishment that worked against Trump. Trump controlled both houses of Congress for his first 2 years, and yet what were they doing? They were investigating Russiagate. They were investigating their own leader of the party.
Well, let me just jump in here. Hans, I mean, you have a legal mind. I don't, okay? And what you both said, I understand the politics of it. And it's very good description from both of you. But particularly with on the one side, with the Trump indictments, you know, I've made it through life with a modicum of intelligence. You know, I can fill out my taxes and I can follow an argument. But when I don't understand these indictments. I just don't, okay? I've watched one, podcast after another. Megyn Kelly has her little legal panel, and they go on and on. And I'm just still thinking, I don't understand what this is about. The documents thing, I get the point, but I think everyone's wrong. I just can't be bothered by it, okay? So my question is to you, with a legal mind, I intuitively think something's wrong when you have to have a novel legal theory. Whenever it's a novel, I'm really worried. It shouldn't be novel. It should be open and shut. It should be obvious. It should be, we got it on videotape. We have witnesses, okay? I understand that. When it's a novel legal case, then I think, no, I'm right. It's all politics.
Yes, it is. And that is exactly my frustration when I watch people talk on both sides, to be honest, about the legal aspects of these indictments, other than the Mar-A-Lago documents one. And maybe we'll leave that to the last, because that's sort of a bit different. All the other ones, when I hear them talking about it, whether it's on one channel or the other, or on Twitter or wherever, it's a total waste of time.
Yeah.
There's no point talking about anything to do with the law, because it just doesn't matter. These are 100% political. And I completely agree with you. These novel theories, not only do they not hold up, you should not be trying them out in this fashion with this defendant. So, I mean, the two we can take care of very quickly are the New York one and the Georgia one. The novel theory there is somehow that actions on the federal level can be prosecuted on the state level. I mean, that's sort of at its most simplest. So both this guy Bragg in New York and Fani Willis down in Georgia, they're relying on acts taken within the federal government by Trump as president to draw conclusions about those acts within their own states and within their own states' laws. So that's sort of at its most simplest is the novelty about it, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. And of course, it would never ever happen to anyone else. I mean, that's just absolutely ridiculous.
I guess that's why it's novel, huh?
Exactly. And I think the Fani Willis took it like, it's like Bragg did his thing in New York, and then Fani Willis did hold my beer, let me have a try here. And then she just went totally over the top. I mean, RICO for essentially doing politics and well, not essentially, for doing politics, that's not what it's there for. It's completely ridiculous what's happened there. Now, my theory as to those cases, as well as the Smith cases in general, is that they just want a conviction. Right. And they want it before 2024. Well, before November 2024. Preferably get Trump to be the nominee. I mean, there won't be any trials until that process plays out. But once that's done, once he's the nominee, then you get a conviction. It doesn't matter if it's going to get overthrown. Look, the state cases, I don't know how they're going to end up in the end. The federal cases are probably going to end up in Supreme Court, and Trump is probably going to the Supreme Court is going to overturn it. But that doesn't matter, because then you're in 25, 26, whatever, and it's done. So all they want is for 2024, during the main campaign, they need to have a conviction, and then they can just wave that at everyone. He's a convicted criminal.
Yeah, no, but now Willis says she's going to put all these people on trial within the next 6 months, 19 defendants. I mean, that's nuts. I mean, how the hell can you organize a trial within 6 months with 19 defendants? So you're basically going to have 40 lawyers, at least 40 different lawyers, and they're all going to be making motions, and they're all going to be arguing with one another. There's no way you can organize this.
It's RICO, so usually these trials take years.
Years, yeah. So
I mean, you're right. It's not gonna be that quick. But I mean, she can hurry up things. And again, I think the idea. Now, it's August, so if they get a conviction by August of next year, that's 1 year. That's perfect. That's exactly what they want. That's exactly what they need. So I think that's the plan with all of these things, and that includes Smith. So Smith's second case that he brought in D.C. about January 6th is, I mean, that's just as ludicrous as the other two. And again, I hate talking about the legal aspects of it because it just doesn't matter. I mean, it's a free speech. He starts off by saying, "Oh, Trump has free speech. Of course, he has free speech." And then he goes on and says, "Oh, but Trump said this and Trump said that." So it's just ridiculous. And obviously, again, that case is brought in D.C. on an accelerated timeline, and not even accelerated. A year from now is plenty of time. If you look at these cases that John Durham brought, that's another topic. One of them, the Sussman case, was done and dusted within 7-8 months or so. So it's possible to get this done. And in DC, of course, you got 95% jury pool that absolutely hates Trump, and so you get a conviction, and then you've got that. And then even if it gets thrown out later on, doesn't matter. You can wave it around.
And probably the DC circuit is also full of Biden and Obama judges. So the DC circuit might even uphold a conviction before it gets to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it would. And then it would have to go to Supreme Court. That's right. So the only one left is and that's the one I don't think they're trying to hurry. That was sort of the anchor case, the first one, the Mar-A-Lago documents case, because that Trump actually did some stupid things there. Now, I'm not saying, no one else would have been prosecuted for that. I mean, anyone at that level in government takes home some documents or whatever, it's a trifle. It really doesn't matter. But he did play stupid games. And then they sent him a grand jury subpoena, which is absolutely over the top as well. These are documents which he had access to anyway, and he knew what they said anyway. It's not like he broke into somewhere and stole sort of super secret documents. So
stole his own documents, huh?
Right.
What?
Exactly.
But this is why, I mean, maybe, Hans, you disagree with us. I think Peter and I more or less think that, look, the Presidential Records Act makes clear that it's up to the president to decide which are his personal records and which are the public records. So what he takes with him are the personal records. What he leaves behind in the Oval Office are the presidential records. And what he has in Mar-a-Lago, he decided it. It's no one else. It's not the archivist who decides, well, this is presidential, this is public. So he had absolute right to those documents. It's not like he slipped back into the Oval Office after midnight and then, ruffled through the documents. So, I think that, he, by law, and of course, by the Constitution, that he's the classifier and declassifier in chief, it doesn't seem like there's much of a case here.
And on top of it, it's all about prosecution discretion. It's up to them. I mean, they would never do this to Obama. They would never do this to Bush. I mean, even if they did exactly the same thing, they would come to the conclusion that George and I have come to, is that what is the harm? You're right. In the details, you shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff, okay? No former president has ever been pressed on it, okay? So, I mean, I know that's saying what was the harm is not a legal thing, but since it all is political, I think that's the best position to take. I mean, what was the harm of it, okay?
No, I completely agree with both of you entirely. The legal problem in that first case, and out of all these cases, that is the only issue I would take seriously as a legal issue, where I would look at the law and actually try and dig into that and analyze it, because it is an actual problem. And I agree with you that it shouldn't have been a problem because he shouldn't have been pursued for it, because no one else has ever been pursued for it and so on. Okay, but leaving all that aside, it's not about Presidential Records Act. It's not about any of those things. It's just about one single thing, and that's the grand jury subpoena. That's what it all is. It comes down to. In April of 2022, Smith got a subpoena for all these boxes.
No, Smith.
That's just a fact.
Whoever was before Smith. Smith wasn't counsel at the time.
Oh, so, well, I mean, wasn't he?
He wasn't. No, he
Oh,
was.
he was not special counsel. No, that's right. He was. It was Nowta who wanted the documents back, so they got a grand jury subpoena, and then Smith came in at it. You're absolutely right. But it comes down to that one event. It should have never happened. Obviously, I mean, getting a grand jury subpoena for a bunch of boxes that a former president took with him. Again, it's never happened with anyone, and everyone took a bunch of things. And completely agree with you guys, but it did happen, and it was a trap. And Trump or his legal people, who are, just kind of a motley crew of different types, they just walked right into it, and they did a really poor job because, or maybe Trump made them. I don't know what happened in the background, but they did some really, really stupid things. And in a nutshell, what they did is they purported to comply. You do not purport to comply with subpoena if you're not going to comply. You just don't do that, because then you've got legal problems which have nothing to do with presidential authority or anything like that. And that's what happened there. So they said, yeah, that's fine. Okay, we'll hand everything over. Okay, we'll sign here, whatever. And what they should have done is, what? Why do you want our boxes? It's got nothing to do with you. We've already given back whatever. We're done here. And if that had happened, there wouldn't have been a search warrant, where the FBI went in there. None of those things would have happened, because they just wouldn't have had the grounds for doing that. But it was having the subpoena, having purported compliance with the subpoena, and then being able to prove that the compliance was not actual compliance, because they had the security camera footage, which is another horrible thing, that they got that as well, and so on. But just as a pure matter of just looking at what these guys did down there in Mar-A-Lago.
Could you just clarify? Stupid. Sorry. Yeah. So what did that April 2022 subpoena demand? What did they want? They wanted all documents, or were there some specific documents they wanted? Right.
This started off it started off soon after Trump left the presidency, because the NARA, the National Archives, they asked for the return of all these documents. And this is your point, George, that you made earlier about, well, sorry, they're Trump's documents. Why do you want that? Okay. So I guess that's where they made the first mistake, where they even entertained those, requests, and then they sent back some stuff. Now, NARA then said, no, this is not everything. Plus, NARA said, oh, there's also classified stuff here that should have never been removed from the White House. So this is a big problem. And then they referred it to DOJ. And then DOJ got this not search warrant. They got a subpoena to hand over all the boxes containing anything that is marked classified. So that was the not classified, but marked, any kind of chop, any kind of description that says classified or whatever.
Even if it's a folder that says it.
Exactly. And anything that's marked classified, irrespective of its actual status. That's what it said. For starters, that's totally overbroad. I mean, that's just absolutely ridiculous. Trump might have just taken a folder as a kind of a memento hanging on the wall, the classified, top secret, whatever. It's just a folder. And in fact, there were a lot of folders that they.
That's why I said it. That's why I said it. Yes.
He genuinely seems to have had a sort of a penchant for these kinds of memento. But if you look at his office up in New York, especially before he became president, he had a lot of interviews there. He's just surrounded by these memorabilia. It's just his thing, right? Anyway, he obviously also took some actual documents, but all that really, I mean, I don't care about that. And as you said, everyone does it, or at least at that level, and no one's ever been pushed on it. The point is, once they got that subpoena for handing over any kind of document that has any kind of classification marking, they said, no, we're not going to do that. Well, this is overbroad, and then they should have pushed back, and just kind of let that process play out. And they would have probably had some friendly courts in Florida, and it could have worked out. But they didn't do that. What they did is they said, "Oh, okay, fine. We'll sign here. Here are the boxes." And of course, it was an incomplete set. And then the DOJ pounced, and this is
how did they know it was incomplete? What made them think it was incomplete?
While the subpoena was being carried out, like they were having discussions between Trump's lawyer, Evan Corcoran, and the DOJ. We're kind of discussing what do we do and when and timelines and so on. While this was going on, very sneaky move, the FBI interviewed this Nowta, Walt Nowta, Trump's valet. And you know, he's just a valet. You know, these FBI people are going to figure out if there's something maybe there, if he's trying to hide something. You know, they look at his micro expressions. That's what they do.
Maybe
right?
he's got a cousin that's illegally in the country, and all these kind of little things that they can throw at you, intimidation.
And that was so. If
I was a valet and the FBI wanted to talk to me, yeah, I would have a lot of micro expressions. Yes, I would.
And this happened. This is just terrible from a weaponizing the Department of Justice point of view. This was simultaneous. So while the lawyer was discussing with DOJ about the modalities of handing over whatever is left, they were talking to Nowta separately, but at the same time. And they picked up that Nowta, is sort of maybe not telling the whole truth, that there's some problem there. That was sort of the trigger there. What they then did is they waited for the documents to be handed over, the incomplete set, or what they suspected to be incomplete. Then they got the security camera footage. So they were also very sneaky about that. They didn't go back to Evan Corcoran, the lawyer they were dealing with. They went to a totally separate lawyer in New York for the Trump organization, who probably had no clue that any of these things were going on. And they said, hey, we're going to serve you with a subpoena for all the security camera footage. And this guy, probably had no idea. And there was a bit of back and forth, and then they handed it over. And the security camera footage apparently, allegedly, disagrees with what Nowta told them. Like Nowta told him, I didn't move any boxes. I'm oversimplifying here. And supposedly on the security camera footage, you can see Nowta moving boxes back and forth. Now, again, we have to wait and see, we haven't seen any of this footage. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But that then led to the raid, because then they went to the court and said, oh, look, this guy told us he didn't move any boxes.
Wasn't there before that a meet in July? Didn't they come in July? And then they gave them some more boxes. So there was
and they showed them the padlock on
exactly. And then they said, well, right, put a second lock on it. So that was before the raid. That was in July.
That was in June. That's correct. And then it was, but they had already talked to Nowta, so it was all kind of a trap. They knew, okay, Nowta is telling us stories. This guy's telling us a different story. We're just gonna kind of keep quiet here, see what they hand over. Then they did hand over some stuff. I mean, Trump's lawyer Corcoran. And then the sort of the trap snapped, because then they had the incomplete set of documents. They had Nowta's statement, and then they went for the security camera footage, and that was kind of the thing that brought it all together. So based on the security camera footage, they were able to show that Nowta allegedly lied to them. Well, why would he lie to them? What are they hiding? Blah blah blah. So then they went to this other judge. That's also such a crazy story. This Reinhardt. I'm sure you guys talked about him before on your show. He's He's sort of this anti-Trump judge down there in Florida.
Florida.
I mean, why did they always assign these judges? I mean, it's a country of 330 million. They just always keep coming back to these characters. Anyway, this guy agreed that it's a problem what happened there with Nowta and the security footage. So he ordered or he granted them the warrant for the search. And then the FBI went in, and of course, then they found another 100 or whatever. But I mean, if you look at these photos, I mean, there's just boxes strewn all over the place. It's pretty chaotic, which of course we're used to from Trump. This kind of chaos. So I'm
sure it was all the menus from the NATO meeting, and then G7, and pictures of himself with Angela Merkel. I don't know. I mean, obviously, none of us know the man personally, but he's been in our lives now for almost a decade, and he's a narcissist, and he likes things about himself. So
yeah, but longer than a decade. I mean, many of us remember him back from the.
Well, I'm just trying to put it into the context of high office. But now, I remember the interview on 60 Minutes about him running for president. Okay, I remember that, and that was like in the 1980s.
Right.
Yeah. No. Look, it's extremely frustrating, because it wouldn't have happened to anyone else, and all the things we just discussed. But the bottom line is, as far as the documents case goes, that is an actual case where they actually did stupid things, and they're going to have to answer for those stupid things, even though the case would have never been brought against anyone else and so on. I mean, I know we talked about the Papadopoulos case with on your show a few years ago, and there's a very similar parallel here. Papadopoulos did absolutely nothing wrong. I mean, he's just some guy who just wanted to endear himself to the campaign, and that was it.
Right.
And then the FBI came knocking and they told him all kinds of tall tales about Russians and this and that and whatever. And he was really racking his brain and he just couldn't figure out what the hell are these people on about, because he didn't do anything. There was nothing there. And then he came up with this guy Mifsud. Oh, maybe he had something to do with it. And it's almost like Papadopoulos himself sort of started believing that maybe this guy Mifsud did do something, like maybe he did plant some info, maybe, you know, and he just got into this sort of mindset where he's like, well, I better not tell him about that. So then he got caught up in these minute little lies about Mifsud because he wanted to kind of deflate that side of things, because he started believing that maybe there is something there. So let's not talk it up, let's talk it down. And then, you know, of course, he had to go to jail for that, even though the guy did absolutely nothing wrong. So in a way, this is sort of similar here, where you guys heard there was a sort of a superseding information brought in a documents case about the security tapes, where now Smith is also alleging Trump said to go and erase the security tapes. Now, we don't know exactly what happened there, but it's one of those things. Supposedly he sent Nowta back to Florida. They were in Bedminster to, you know, try and find the director of the security booth there and try and find the tapes or whatever. I mean, that's we're gonna have to see which part of that is true and which part is not true or whatever. But this mere idea of trying to cover it up, even though there is nothing to cover up, there was nothing bad done.
If Trump had ordered the destruction of those tapes and those tapes were destroyed, so what?
Yeah.
So what? It's his.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people forget. You know, George will remember is Nixon's tapes. You know, until we got into the scandal, Nixon could have brought him into the Rose Garden and burned them publicly.
No question. I mean, they were his tapes. Yeah, that was his tapes. No question. He could have done it. I mean, they would have probably impeached him, but he would have survived. I mean, because I think they wouldn't have had the votes. He said you know, they're his tapes, they're presidential tapes. They belong to the president. He can burn them, you know, and so on. So I absolutely agree. I think that Trump could have done so. I must say, I just doubt that it happened the way they say it is. I just, you know, I mean, it didn't happen. I mean, it wasn't erased. So I mean, when you say let's do something and then it doesn't happen, you can't really. I mean, you either commit the crime or you don't commit the crime. You can't just simply say, well, he committed a crime because he wanted to erase it, but in the end he didn't erase it. Well, that means you haven't committed the crime.
What is so frustrating for me is they really want us to chase our tail on these things, and it's getting down to, I mean, you know, when we finish this conversation, the three of us, there'll be three different interpretations of what happened. Okay. And it'll probably be very positive. Okay. But it will be slightly different things. And it would be something that none of us would ever debate. I mean, it would just be so frivolous. And that's what I feel very frustrated. You know, I'm obligated to follow what's going on. It's my profession here. But I feel like I'm being made a fool of every time I'm listening to these legal theories. Meanwhile, I'm losing count of how much the Biden family stuffed their pockets. It really blows your brain.
It does. And we have the latest thing that happened, which is just extraordinarily, I mean, insane, is that the Jack Smith subpoenaed Trump's Twitter data, all of it.
Right.
And there's a judge in D.C. called Beryl Howell.
The chief judge, yeah.
She supervised the Mueller probe, and there wasn't much supervision going on there. Just terrible person, absolutely terrible in terms of her Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, she's completely insane in that way. So I read through this latest transcript of what happened when Jack Smith asked for those, or not asked, he got a subpoena for Trump's Twitter data, all of it. Right. Twitter, to its credit, said, no, we're not handing it over until we inform Trump, because Trump might want to invoke some privileges here. And so this is the crazy thing. This isn't about like last year or whatever. This is while he was president.
Yes.
And she just said, Beryl Howell just said, well, whatever. I mean, you don't use Twitter for, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, you know, you don't use Twitter for official stuff, so I'm sure it's fine.
Right. But just
what does she know?
Following up, didn't the Supreme Court rule against Trump when it said that his Twitter account, he can't block anyone on his Twitter account because it is a public record, and therefore it doesn't belong personally to him. So you have the Supreme Court saying his Twitter account is basically not his own personal account. It's a presidential record. So now they're suddenly turning around and say, oh, no, it's a personal account. So you can, we can just get it without informing him.
That is exactly right. 100%.
They weren't counting on people like George and yourself to point that out.
No, I'm obviously the past few years, I'm used to like seeing absolutely insane things, but I gotta say that transcript of Twitter trying to not it's not even that they didn't want to hand over. All they wanted is to tell Trump that they're going to be handing over. Just give him a little heads up in case he wants to do something about it. Try and get the court to stop it, or make some emergency motion or whatever. Well, she stopped that. She said they can't do that. But reading that transcript was like one of the craziest things I've ever read, where Beryl Howe sort of presumes to know everything about everything. She knows, and in particular, how Trump should run his affairs. So she knows that you would never use your Twitter account for anything official. So therefore, you just got to hand it over. She has no clue of any of these things that they talk about, like the metadata and kind of draft tweets. And there's, how these IT companies work. They just collect data like crazy. She has no idea about this stuff about gender data in there. She said, you got to hand over the gender data. I mean, it's just
what is it? What is that?
Exactly. She has no clue, but she's so totally insane as far as Trump is concerned that anything that is that comes her way to do with Trump is an immediate bad guy. I mean, it's like 100-something pages worth of just craziness, Trump derangement syndrome. Right. And you think this is the chief judge up there in DC in the appeals court, and you kind of wonder, luckily there is one level above her, the Supreme Court. But often, or most of these cases, never get to the Supreme Court. In most cases, the Court of Appeals is the final stage for almost everything.
And so she also said nutty things like he's going to destroy the record. Well, how can he destroy the record? I mean, Twitter has the entire record. I mean, he can't destroy. He can erase his messages, but Twitter has the messages.
And she even entertained the thought that he might.
He's a flight risk. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He might abscond. I mean, that's also in there. I mean, he just. But these are the people.
Venezuela or Havana? Is he going to go?
No, it is completely insane. That document is just such an indictment of the judges themselves and of the courts themselves. I mean, this is not a judge. I mean, she would be happy in Beijing or in Pyongyang or whatever. I mean, that'd be no difference.
She's a prosecutor in a robe.
Exactly. But she doesn't even try. Normally, they sort of try to do, prosecution, Mr. Smith, what have you got to say? Or is that really true? Whatever. As you read through this thing, she's completely on the side. Not only completely on the side of the DOJ, she's like an extension of it. She's actually like an enhancement of the DOJ. So the DOJ lawyer says something. Well, there is a possibility that some of this Trump stuff maybe. No, it's not. It just kind of so. Right. It was an eye-opener in a sense that I was surprised, because I really expected it to be the worst thing ever. And it was worse than that.
Another eye-opener, and I hope I understand this correctly, but the case in Georgia, in federal cases, they don't have cameras, or very, very rarely. But in Georgia, the venue, it will be televised. It will be a televised event. Now, what power do they have to make Trump sit through that?
Well, he has to be there if he's on trial.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the that's part of the show. I mean, none of these cases so far, in none of the cases did they have that option of having it televised. So now Fani Willis has given them that opportunity. As you guys said at the outset, it's all political. And one of the things that was missing, we said the main thing is conviction. You need conviction because then you can hang it around his neck. One of the things was missing, absolutely right, Peter, is TV. Well, now you got TV.
Right.
And George, it's very interesting, George. I mean, we talked about this briefly a few days ago, but going back to the perfect telephone call with Zelensky, remember that? And at the time, and George and I talked about it, I mean, this is just out of whole cloth. I mean, I have no idea what their arguments are. I had no idea that that would be just a granule of what they would do next and what they're doing right now. I mean, this is a pattern. And what is interesting and very dangerous, in my opinion, is that they really do stretch the imagination on these things here. I mean, it is red meat for liberals. I mean, they are really. I mean, Rachel Maddow had Hillary Clinton on yesterday. It was obnoxious. But I mean, this is this pattern. The more outrageous, the more it's acceptable to move forward.
Well, that's right, and what you now have, this woman. I mean, she's a total political operator. I mean, she's running for election. She also loves the cameras, and she's going to want the whole drama. The whole thing. She's not going to let it go. But going back to the political aspects of it, Trump is rising in the polls, and I think he's rising in the polls because I think ultimately Americans, even those who don't like Trump, don't like the idea of their right to vote against Trump being taken away from them. I mean, people just have that, really? I don't want to be told. I don't like being told what to do. I would do it, but I don't like somebody telling me to do something. And I think that Trump is now coming across as a martyr, which he hadn't before. Now he comes across as a martyr. And I think the Democrats are shooting themselves in the foot.
Well, and add to it, George, if you look at where Trump was polling in 2016 and in 2020, he is head and shoulders above where he was in those two campaigns. Okay. Now, we've had our problems with polling, but I mean, neck and neck with Biden. He was never neck and neck with anyone in his two previous attempts.
Yeah, I don't agree with you guys on the sort of the final conclusion here. Although I agree with everything, just not the very final step.
I am not convinced one way or another yet.
Okay, so why don't you? Okay, Hans, why don't you agree?
Very simply, because I think once you have the conviction, and that's why I keep making that point, everything else is kind of gone, because there's so many people who don't study these things or read about these things at any level of detail. I mean, there's so many voters who hardly know anything about any of these issues we're just talking about here, and all they will then know is, oh my God, he was convicted. Oh my God, he was convicted of RICO or whatever, lying, this, that, and the other, obstruction. So that will be such a huge thing hanging around his neck. So I think the Democrats' sort of calculus here of that is going to win the election is correct. I don't think he can overcome that. It's just not. Yes, there are going to be people who say, no, this is all politicized, this is horrible or whatever. But there's going to be at least as many people who are going to say, oh my God, he was convicted, added to the ones who hate him already. So look, we don't know, and we're going to have to see how it plays out. But clearly that is what Democrats have planned. And, I think their plan is going to work. To me, the bigger problem is that we're really we got these judges who aren't real judges, but they make these decisions that affect everyone, affect all of us. But to me, the broadest problem of all is that facts are now irrelevant. Facts just don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, everything we talk about with these cases, we can look at the facts. Yeah, sometimes Trump may have done something stupid or whatever, but there's nothing there. But that doesn't matter. You look at half the networks, it doesn't matter. Facts don't matter. This judge, I mean, as I said, this judge is worse than the prosecutors. She's worse than MSNBC. And she's like
that's true. Also, this woman, this Tanya Chutkan, who's going to be presiding over the January 6th case, she actually wants to enhance prison terms. So the prosecutors asked for 3 years, and said, I don't think 3 years is enough. Make it 5 years. And she's also said while she was doing her usual summary that Trump should be in prison. I mean, she actually said Trump should actually be in prison. I mean, how can you have a judge like that presiding over Trump case who's already on record as saying Trump should be in prison?
That's right. And I mean, these people were pretty bad to begin with in terms of wokeness and all these kinds of things. But I think Trump just broke their brains. They are so completely insane, and not only these judges, but these judges are so important. We know there's so many people who can't think straight because of Trump. Just the word Trump just triggers them, and then they lose all kind of capacity for rational and logical thought. But the fact that so many judges are among that group, I mean, remember Sullivan, the Flynn judge? He's another exemplar of that.
Just forgotten about him. Yeah.
Trump. Then they all just completely lose it. I mean, these are supposed to be sane people who are supposed to keep it together.
Amy Berman Jackson, the one who presided over the
Stone trial. Oh my God, yeah.
The Roger Stone case as well.
She's another one, right?
I remember, and she was told, "Hey, you had in voir dire, the person who was the foreperson, she lied. She lied completely about her, I'm unbiased." And then there was a whole record of her Facebook posts. And so Amy Berman Jackson still didn't throw out the verdict. I mean, it's like somebody lies to get on the jury, but she's like, yeah, that's fine, no problem there.
Yeah, but Hans, we delve deep into it, and when George and I are very grateful to have your legal mind explaining these things here. But you're right. I mean, the people don't understand the minutia of even what all the words mean. But the point is that, and I want to go beyond Trump, okay? Because George can marshal facts and a theory for his side, and you can also do yours. It's too early to say right now. But what really bothers me is that the disaffection people have for institutions and even politics now. I mean, even if you hate Trump, I mean, a lot of people just say, well, yeah, they're really giving it to him. Not too fair, though. I mean, look at Hillary. I mean, she got away with all kinds of things, okay? And so many other people did. And I really worry that it's just going to create the cultural civil war that is brewing right now. It's just going to go into high gear. And because there's going to, as George and I have discussed before, rightly or wrongly, okay, this is the theory of the case for his supporters. He won in 2016, he won in 2020, and he can win in 2024. And if he doesn't, then it was rigged or stolen, okay, irrespective of any facts. Okay, and I really worry about that. Okay, because and then you have people like these Merrick Garlands, they start locking up people. Okay, preventatively. Okay, they're election deniers. Okay, they're COVID deniers. They're all these deniers. Okay, George and I did a video a couple of days ago about the same process it's going in to deal with the alternative for Deutschland. Okay, what they're trying to erase them. It's the same tactic.
Yeah, no, I have to say I'm a lot more pessimistic than I've ever been in terms of the medium and long-term outlook here. Short term is totally broken anyway, but like just even long-term, I always thought, yeah, the ship will right itself. I'm not so sure anymore because again, we're not the debate, the public discourse is no longer about facts. The public discourse is about what everyone thinks as facts or what they've already made up their minds about. You can't have a proper debate which is not based on actual reality, on actual facts of this happened, this did not happen. And that's sort of, to me, a very fundamental problem. And will it get better? I mean, the only kind of thing people say sometimes is like, well, if Trump is gone, then that sort of the thing that makes everyone go insane is gone. And then, the country can return to sanity. I'm not so sure. I mean, once your brain is broken, it's broken.
But I just ask, well, no, look, I mean, with the other side of the coin here, obviously, is, with this all the facts surrounding Hunter Biden. I mean, this is just such a cover-up and a cushy deal. I mean, the special prosecutor, he's just going to be doing his investigation ad infinitum until everybody forgets, okay? I mean, this is, and from what I understand, Weiss's promotion, it's illegal. I mean, it's under the provisions of the Department of Justice. He could not have that job, okay? I mean, these things have a cumulative effect, okay? So you deny people the ability to vote for someone, and then you have the other guy using the power of the state to protect his son and his own legacy over criminal behavior. I mean, that doesn't wash well with the majority of people.
But the funny thing is that Trump or his sort of team keep giving assists to those people, like for instance Garland in this case. So you mentioned about the regulation about you have to be an outsider in order to be special counsel, and that is true. But guess who was made a special counsel as an insider.
John Durham.
John Durham, of course. So, it's like, well, Barr did it. Why shouldn't we do it? You keep having, or you all heard when Garland had his press conference the other day. He was like, well, David Weiss, he's a Trump appointee, so of course he's acceptable. It's always, the narrative is kind of lost, and those are very simple facts, which is, again, as soon as you scratch a bit, in Durham's case, Durham was on his way out. This was like very, very late in the Trump presidency, so he wasn't going to be attorney in Connecticut much longer anyway. So you could sort of fudge it and say, okay, or you could have backdated his appointment, then he would have been an outsider once he left the DOJ. Anyway, you just scratch the surface a bit, and the issue goes away. But people are stuck with that image, or Wise. As soon as you scratch a bit on the surface, well, actually Trump, nominally appointed him, but we all know he was actually put forward by the Democrat senators in
Delaware, and he's a Delaware, Delaware is
Delaware
by the Biden's own Delaware. But Durham, in the case of Durham, was Barr appointed him because he wanted the whole thing covered up. Barr had no intention of prosecuting anyone. He made it clear that he wasn't interested in prosecuting, and so he ruled out prosecuting all the top brass. I can't remember when he gave that interview. So no, I don't think it's important. We should prosecute. We just need to find out what really happened.
Right.
So that the Democrats aren't doing that. But Barr said no, we don't need to prosecute anyone. We can just simply find out what happened.
Right, and if anyone had been honest, the same people crying now about Wise and the appointment there should have said it at the time as well. Which is like, well, no, Durham's an insider. You got to bring an outsider. But of course, if you bring in an outsider, you have no control over the outcome, and that's that's part of the problem. So, I don't get too hung up on the appointment procedures or whatever. What matters is, who are these people? And I think Durham is overall like a good man. I see no evidence that he's not, but he just lives in this old paradigm. He lives in this paradigm where DOJ like lawyers are proper, and if I ask for documents, they will have FBI. Everyone's proper. There's processes and so on. He just lives in that paradigm, and he just doesn't understand that it doesn't apply anymore. I'm not so sure. I think Barr does understand the new paradigm, but yeah.
Yeah, but it gets down to, all of the issues that we've discussed here. There's such a high level of incompetence, number one. I wish people were like Durham. I'm old school too. When everything is clear.
Just go do it back to
and then the second thing, incompetence, and just rank partisanship. And I think when the two come together, this is the kind of mess that we find ourselves in. Sorry, George.
Yeah, no, but you've written a lot about the case of Durham and how Durham completely misconceived the prosecution. He made this Igor Danchenko, who's just a little hustler. He made him a kind of a central figure in all of this. And then he didn't realize until the eve of the trial that he had been a confidential human source for years for the FBI. Durham, he has a senior position, and he makes mistakes of this magnitude, and then he comes along and says, well, Sussman fooled the FBI, fooled whatever the name of that guy was, Baker. I think James Baker was like, he fooled James Baker. He fooled him. What, Baker didn't know who Sussman was working for? It's a joke. Of course he knew Sussman was working for the Clinton campaign. So, it was ridiculous. You have to say that, either, as you say, Peter, he's totally incompetent, or that he wanted to just throw the case. So then you knew that basically have two failures, and that's it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And unfortunately, Trump did not declassify the big bundle, which we still haven't seen, the Russiagate bundle.
We never will.
And if it had been left to people like us, just give us the documents. Well, we don't need Durham. We'll just figure it out. We would have figured it out.
Right. But who are these lawyers? Did they go to law school? Is that what happens in law school? I just wonder where these people come from, these barrels.
George, that's such a good question. And when Hans was talking about the lawyers, in the back of my mind, I was thinking about when I was in graduate school, and I knew a lot of law students. And even then, and this is the 1990s, and I was just thinking, you don't strike me as like the caliber of Supreme Court, okay? Because these people were all very ideologically motivated, okay? I mean, people see it all the time in popular culture, but this is 1990s when it was all percolating, okay? And I even then I reflected upon, I wonder what the law is going to be like when these people have power. Well, we see.
Well, you know, I'm old enough to remember, well, not only to remember, but also old enough that things were different. On my first day in law school, I remember the dean gave us, you know, the introductory speech, whatever, and then he did something that it was pretty scary, but that was how things were, and they're not anymore. He said, look left, look right. One of the people you just saw is not going to be here in 2 years' time. And he was right, because there were standards. There were like extremely tough exams, extremely tough standards. And if you didn't meet those, you know, you were out. And now we live in a sort of society where it's not a meritocracy anymore. I mean, I don't know. They don't like, yeah, sure. I mean, just admission means you're going to graduate. Oh, you know, you made a mistake. Well, it's not really a mistake, you know. So anyway, I don't want to kind of veer too far away from the core of it. But there are, I mean, education is a big problem. But it's the professors. I mean, all these old professors are gone, so you get kind of the woke people. It's the people they hang out with. I think places like DC are absolute poison in terms of everyone is just reinforcing each other's biases because they're all there together. And, you know, it's very, other than on the internet, it's very hard in real life to come across people who, you know, still have a good sense of reality. And obviously on the internet, you have a lot of people who don't either. I'm just talking about the ones you like the Russiagate researchers or whatever who get this. But I mean, I think we started off by talking about how Obama kind of progressively replaced like the people. You know, they used to say it's a long march through the institutions as you kind of undermine the institutions. Well, it's also a long march through the people in the institutions. They've all been, you know, progressively replaced. If you'd asked me in 2016 during that campaign, whether the entire FBI top brass is basically just kind of corrupted, woke, whatever you want to call it, I said, no, it's the FBI.
I agree.
Comey, yeah, I mean, Comey, I think he was visible. He was shady. You could see that. But wow, it's the FBI. You got all these DOJ. You got proper DOJ lawyers. They went to Yale. They must be proper, right? And then you look at the Flynn case, and you got this Brandon Van Grack and all these people who are just awful, just hiding stuff and just playing games. And anyway, a lot of this started with, I mean, Obama's blamed for a lot of this, but it was really George W. Bush who started this huge expansion of the federal bureaucracy. I mean, how many hundreds of thousands of people did it grow by while he was there? Yeah. And again, all these people, this is part, I mean, so a sociologist would be able to explain this a lot better, but all these people are there in DC. They all meet together. They all have their kids at the same schools. They're all kind of mingling together. And it's just this reinforcing thing. And that's aside from the traditional DC population. You know, Nixon lost DC by something like 92-8, or don't quote me on that, 90-10 or something. So even back then, even in Nixon was the biggest blowout of all elections ever, and he lost DC. And so forget about all these DC bureaucrats. It's just DC is not.
Can it be ended? Because Trump has said recently that he's going to end it. He's going to end DC as a kind of a separate legal entity. There won't be any more DC judges. There won't be DC courts, DC circuit. He's going to end it. Can it be ended?
Well, my suggestion, which I've had for a very, very long time, is you got to break it up. That's the only way. And other countries broke it up. I mean, look at Germany, for instance. It's far from perfect how they do things. And it's more kind of happenstance that things got broken up. But because of the reunification, so some departments stayed in Bonn, some went to Berlin. You got the Supreme Court in Karlsruhe, which is completely separate again. You got the central bank in Frankfurt. It's like everyone is in a different place. And other countries do that too. I think that's really the only way. You cannot have this kind of concentration of power and people just in this one place. Everyone is there. Every single department, every single agency, every single lobbyist, every single politician, they're all there in the same place. So you just gotta like, yeah, FBI, you guys want a new headquarters, $1 billion or whatever? Yeah, let's have the new headquarters in Little Rock, Arkansas, or whatever. Just move it over there. Let's who else? Oh, Department of Homeland Security. Why don't we move you out to whatever? I think that's in the long run, that's the only way you're going to tackle this problem.
Right. Yeah. No, that's right. So now going back to the Biden case, how do you see it? What's going to happen there? I mean, do you think they're going to move? Do you think the House is going to move to impeach Biden?
Wait, George's question is what is going to happen there? My question is what isn't going to happen?
The House, they haven't even released the Michael Atkinson transcript. Michael Atkinson is the guy with, Trump impeachment #1. He's the one who caused it all to happen.
He's the Inspector General, wasn't he? The Inspector General.
Correct. And he took the complaint and he blew it into this giant thing, even though it wasn't part of his remit. It had nothing to do with him. It was just a call that was in the executive branch made in the White. It had nothing to do with him whatsoever. And even, if you'll recall, they even changed the complaint form to, and we found copies of the old one in archive, and he changed it to accommodate exactly this case. I mean, who does that, right? Anyway, long story short is that during the impeachment inquiry, Adam Schiff got all these people in depositions, and Fiona Hill, they all told their stories, and Adam Schiff then came out and waved their transcripts. Look, this is terrible. Trump is terrible, whatever. The one transcript he never released was the Michael Atkinson one. He buried it. Well, now Kevin McCarthy has the rights over it, and he hasn't released it. And it's been 6 months, 8 months, whatever.
What do you think is in the transcript?
Well, it's not going to be something magic, but I think what's going to be in there is the fact that this Atkinson was making up the rules as he went along. And when he was pressed on it, he probably stumbled and he just kind of gave answers that weren't straight. But whatever it is, we know it's bad because Schiff didn't release it. But why hasn't McCarthy released it? Now, this is just one little tiny thing. It's one example of so many things, but it's the one I keep coming back to, because if they can't even do such a small, tiny little thing, like here's the transcript, are they really going to go after the Bidens? Are they really going to, impeach Biden? I don't think so. I mean, things change.
You can't hold the conference together. I mean, there'll be all the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and Matt Gaetzes and who will vote to impeach, but he's not going to hold the conference together. Half of the Republicans aren't going to vote to impeach.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. But given that that's the case, then at least why don't you do the piecemeal thing? Why don't you do the Atkinson transcript? Why don't you do any number of other things? Subpoena some people. There's so many people that they haven't subpoenaed on the Biden front. There's this other guy. They got Devin Archer to talk to him. By the way, that was not a subpoena. It was just a friendly interview, like a voluntary friendly interview, which was very revealing. It was actually good. But there's another guy who knows where the skeletons are buried, a guy called Eric Schwerin, who was like a kind of Biden's gopher. Like Devin Archer was mainly involved with Burisma, not mainly, like that was his involvement. He was not involved with China. He was not involved with any of these other things. Plus, he was arrested in 2016 for scamming this native tribe. So he was out of the picture. Well, how about go and subpoena some people who know about where the skeletons are buried, or know more about that, who were there for longer, who were there in other roles. We haven't seen any of that happening. So I'm pretty pessimistic on the whole that these guys will get it together. Look at what they could do so much on the FBI side. They could defund DOJ. They could make carve-outs. No, you don't get money for that. Did that.
Nuclear option. The nuclear option.
Instead, they're talking about, have $1 billion for your new building.
Well, Hans, something George and I have mulled over is that even though they want the Republican-based Trump supporters obviously want the DOJ and the Biden administration to lay off Trump for over all these frivolous things here. But I think the Republican establishment just doesn't really want to tackle corruption. It's just like, we just don't usually talk about these kinds of things. We don't show everybody our dirty linen because once that door is open, and I think it's pretty obvious, it's pretty rampant all through, the political establishment, Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever. It's what Hunter Biden did was sloppy and greedy, and I'm talking about Joe too. But it's not outside the norm, the normal activities of these types of people. And I think there's just too many Republicans that we don't really need to go down that path. Okay, and I think that's one of the hesitations here.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And the reason why it looks more sleazy and more sloppy and more greedy than the usual arrangement is because the Bidens are so
sloppy, greedy, and
exactly, but they're just not very sophisticated. Sorry to say that, but they're just not. I mean, Hillary set up this foundation, and then the foundation can pay for your travel and for this and for Chelsea's wedding, whatever. You arrange it through some vehicle. Yeah. But the Bidens didn't do that. They were like, yeah.
No, Hunter was the vehicle.
Yeah.
That's right. But it's very interesting also that the other day, Peter and I did a podcast on Mitch McConnell. And Mitch McConnell, what was on his mind? He's got two things on his mind. A, he has to stop Trump. B, he has to give everything to Ukraine. Nowhere is there C, I have to do something about Biden. I mean, that isn't even on his radar that he has to do anything about Biden or the Democrats. No, Trump and Ukraine. That's the only thing he's thinking about. And that's, I think, true of the Senate leadership. I mean, that wasn't just McConnell. I mean, that's true of Thune and all the rest of them. Stop Trump and give everything to Ukraine.
Yeah, 100%. Look at what they did to Bush. Messed it up in Iraq. You never heard the end of it. Now, Biden messed up Afghanistan. We just had the 2-year anniversary. No one's talking about that. Just some dead Marines, whatever. Bush, supposedly messed up Katrina down in New Orleans, right? Again, all these big mess ups that Biden has, no one's talking about. You're absolutely right. It's astonishing what he gets away with. It's also astonishing what his spokeswoman gets away with. I mean, she just has the most stupid takes you could ever hear. And it's like no one bats an eye. Yeah, whatever. It's just imagine
like Trump. Dan Goldman, they talked about the weather on these conference calls. It's like, they truly despise us, all of us. Okay.
And just to further to your point, we've had this horrific fires in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Biden is on the beach. He's sunning on the beach. And no one is saying, where's Biden? Well, how come he's not flying to Hawaii? I mean, and even Obama, no one is even saying, well, hey, this is Obama's home. This is where he's from. I think he was born here. And again, that's it. I mean, imagine if it was Trump and Trump was golfing and there was this horrific fire in Hawaii. I mean, we wouldn't hear the end of it.
Yeah,
no, that's right.
On top of it, George, I don't know if you've been to Hawaii. I was there as a child. It's one of the largest military installations in the world. They're telling us that they didn't have the infrastructure at that huge military base to help those poor people. I mean, I find that just completely unacceptable. Okay, we pay how many billions and billions and billions of dollars every single year? What is it for? It's really amazing.
It is, and then. Biden said no comment, the most callous thing you could, and no one cares. I mean, again, if it had been Trump, Bush, whatever, it would have been like the end of the world. Or again, his spokeswoman. When it was Sean Spicer up there, they were tearing into this guy. He said one wrong word and you would not hear the end of it for the next 4 weeks, right? This woman says only wrong words. I mean, she's just, the other day she called Mazie Hirono, first of all, by the wrong name, and then she thought that she's actually a man. I mean, that Mazie Hirono's a man. And
she also believes that she is history.
She is history. You remember that?
I am history.
I am history, yes. I walk in history. I am history. I mean, imagine somebody saying that.
And everything's fine. But if it's Sean Spicer or Sarah Huckabee or whatever, oh my God, end of the world. So that's sort of what we're facing. And I keep coming back to the fact I don't see any path out. I see the Democrats have 2024 pretty much locked out at this point. All the focus is on Trump. They're probably going to replace Biden at some point. They're going to have Newsom, that's my guess.
Before 24, you think it's going to happen?
Before 24, right.
Well, speaking of which, an idea, and I don't know, for some reason, I know the procedures of the DNC better than I know of the RNC. I don't know why that's the case, but there's a conviction, multiple convictions. Obviously, there'll be appeals. Is there a way for the RNC to change the top of the ticket, or are they stuck with it? Because both parties have different rules. I don't know if you guys know anything about that. I don't.
No, I don't either. I would expect there would be, and the reason the thing that would stop them is just sort of public outcry. But technically, I would assume there has to be some mechanism.
Right. But I don't think
that. What if
remember when the whole Hillary's emails came out, and the DNC was pondering if they needed to replace the ticket. Okay, but that's the DNC. I don't know what the RNC's rules are.
But it's very different. I think it's almost impossible. I mean, if you won the election, you've got the delegates. I think it's almost impossible to replace it. I mean, this Tanya Chutkan could imprison Trump pending an appeal. I mean, she could do that. I mean, she's done that with other January the 6th defendants. I mean, that's still a possibility that Trump could actually be imprisoned at some point between now and November 2024.
And so, George, would the Secret Service have the adjacent? Yeah.
I haven't really thought this through. I mean, they're just, hey, I am history. We're just making history.
Trump could say, "Hey, what are you doing? I'm history."
But he could still run for president out of prison. I mean, I don't think that wouldn't stop him.
No, I don't think it would. I think you're right. There's probably some mechanism for replacing your ticket. There has to be. They got to have some kind of.
What if someone dies?
Well, that's it. But I think short of that. But even if somebody dies, then it's whoever the number two on the ticket will then become number one, and then he selects his number two. But I don't think you can just simply replace the ticket, just replace number one, number two.
You've opened up a can of worms, because I was reading, it was an article on Zero Hedge, is that Trump may approach RFK Jr. to take the VP spot. Trump gets knocked off and the GOP ticket is led by a Kennedy. That would be the cherry on top of the cake, really.
It would be, but that just shows you again the sort of the lunacy.
We laugh, Hans, but I mean, it's not impossible.
No, it's not.
Everything we've seen.
That's right, but that's the lunacy of our times. It's completely insane. I mean, as nice of a man as he is, Robert Kennedy is like totally different from normal Republicans in like 95% of things. But the fact that that's even a possibility tells you how these things are just crazy.
Right. But I mean, but that's why, I mean, the thing about Gavin Newsom is, what is the mechanism? I mean, if Biden steps aside, then Harris becomes president. For Gavin Newsom to get into the number one spot, you'd have to kick Harris out. And I don't quite see how you
all
right, go.
No, that's why I know more about the DNC than the RNC. Okay.
So how
there was Harris could technically remain on the ticket as VP.
But why would she? She would be, if Biden steps aside.
There's no primary. There's no primary. Okay, she's just continuing on to the next election cycle. So she won the primary with Joe in 2020. She's just going to continue peddling water in that space, because the DNC can change the candidate under certain circumstances. So there's no reason why Harris has to be elevated, because she was on the primary as vice president.
No,
okay?
I
won the vice president.
But what I'm saying is that Biden is president. If he steps aside and says, I'm resigning as president, then
no, he's not. We're not talking about resigning. He's just he decides not to run.
But he's not. But there's no evidence that he's going to decide not to run. I mean, I just don't.
There's no evidence he's running. He doesn't have a campaign. He doesn't have a team. There's no evidence whatsoever that he's running. Lyndon Johnson decided not to run very, very late in the game.
March 68.
1968, right? So that's 6 months out. So anyway, it's just a prediction, but
right.
I just don't see. I think Democrats want to make sure that Trump is locked up as the nominee,
Exactly,
and then Biden makes the announcement.
Right, but that would be very late in the game. That would be, you're talking about July, August. I mean, very unlikely that Trump would be locked up before July and August.
That depends on how the early primaries go.
And George, we all know the fanaticism of these people. They'll break all the rules. They'll throw things aside. They'll do. I mean, buckle up and brace for impact, because as George and I've said, and Hans, I'm sure you'll agree with this, they've started something they cannot stop. They have to go through with it now. If you're going to shoot the king, don't miss. Well, they're in the process of shooting the king.
Yeah, it is interesting, but Biden is a curmudgeonly old man. You can't push him aside. I mean, short of just simply putting something into his milk, and I mean, and just having, because I mean, he's determined to do this. He probably isn't doing anything because he thinks, I don't need to do anything. I'm just going to win this. He didn't do anything in 2020 and he won. So that's probably why he doesn't have any kind of an organization or anything.
But you've got, I mean, the media is always a good sort of litmus test for how things really stand with him. And they're, for the first time ever, kind of shooting at him or against him in little ways, but it's definitely starting. I mean, the Hunter Biden thing, even Washington Post had a story now. I mean, it was like nothing to see here, nothing to see here, nothing. And this week they had a story saying, well, actually that deal that was made, his plea bargain where he just gets this global immunity, yeah, that's a bit fishy. That's kind of not right. And I was like, whoa, that's Washington Post. They're saying this stuff. And you just got little indicators all over the map where they're sort of turning against him, just bit by bit, or at least we're at the point now where you don't have to circle the wagons as strongly anymore. So I don't know who runs these things. I don't think there is one person who runs these things or one group who runs these things. I just think Democrats are like an ant colony where everyone automatically knows what to do. You don't have to tell them what to do. Like with these, with the Russiagate, people ask, well, where's the email that ordered him to say this or that? You don't need emails. They know what to do. As you talked earlier about Baker and Sussman, they both knew exactly what their roles were. Yeah. They knew exactly what to say. I mean, it's all kind of, they're part of that system. It's like, as I said, it's like an ant colony where everyone knows what they're doing.
Well, don't you think it's just kind of a combination of everything we've said here about, looking at the next few months here? I mean, if there's the perception on the side of the Democrats that they have neutralized Trump with convictions, then they would feel that it would be safe to ease Joe out, okay? And because if Trump is neutralized, then they can, I think obviously it's Gavin Newsom. I think that's where everybody's looking right now. And I've looked at some of his interviews. Newsom is pretty smug. I think he's feeling pretty good. He's feeling pretty good. Is that he's not going to have to break a sweat with that wax in his hair, and he's just going to, and because I think that's what DeSantis should have done.
Right, but I think
wait out and see what goes. If it goes his way, swoop in, because that's exactly what Gavin Newsom did.
Because 68, everything was different then, because you really didn't have the primary system then. 68, the party leaders decided who would be the nominee. I mean, so Humphrey didn't even run in any of the primaries. So there, and he got the nomination. You can't do it now. I mean, now, when you have the primaries, all the states expect primaries. It's just going to be almost impossible for the party leaders then just to decide, oh, it's going to be Gavin Newsom. I just don't think that the party is built.
Oh, George, with their super delegates and all this other bullshit they have, I think they got a lot of tools, but particularly with the DNC. With the RNC, I need to educate myself more, okay? But with the DNC, whatever, if it's the Obamas or whoever that flips the switch, it's going to happen because they do everything in lockstep.
Yep.
All right then. Well, we will see. As
We'll see.
Trump likes to say.
This is part of the public record. We will revisit in a few months.
We'll see what happens, as Trump likes to say.
Thanks, Hans.
Or again,
Thanks for having me.
Yogi Berra used to say, predictions are very difficult, particularly about the future. So, but anyway, Hans, thank you so much for giving us your time. As always, a lot of fascinating insight, a great conversation. Look forward to having you back again very soon. Thank you. And
thank you.
Bye-bye, Peter.